This is our first time trying a wireframe for a bird face, for an eagle's head. So far I'm pretty happy with the scale of it. Of course, I'll template this all in paper. We'll make sure all the paper works and fits. I'll get the eyes fitted in the eagle's head. It's going to take a few days of messing around with this to get all the details in, but we're getting there. Michelle and I usually just look for some detailed photos that we can print off Google when we're getting started. And then you can see I'm studying the placement of the eye and how the bridge of the beak and the distance between the bridge of the beak and the eye are placed. So I'm trying to visualize that in wire to make sure I get the spacing right, the width and the symmetry, right? So that's kind of key when I'm building these. I'm really focused on eye placement. So eye placement is super important because you want it to look natural. I want the bird to be able to even stare ahead or stare at an object and have that eye placement correct. So it's really important that they're far enough in the head and the head is wide enough that the eye placement can look natural. At this stage, we're just doing a quick mock-up. I'm clamping it there just to get a visual so I can start, as you can see here, where the neck and the top of the neck and the bottom of the neck are wired to the body. And I'm figuring out how I'm going to shape the body around that structural frame. So it's just like drawing with a pencil. So I take the round bar and I use that basically as my pencil to outline where the body of the bird will be and make sure I can stand back and look at it now and make sure that it's to scale and it's got the right shape and the right length. The neck is long enough and everything flows. And then when I wireframe and get everything tacked like that, Michelle can come behind me and start paper templating and making all the templates. She'll wire, she'll paper the whole bird, transfer all the templates to the sheet metal, draw it all out, number everything so I know where it goes, and then I'll come along and I'll cut everything and clean everything up and shape all the material to fit. And we just kind of continue like that, one piece after another. So once we're finished cutting the panels out, now we're shaping them to fit around the legs, rolling the pieces on a slip roll. The handheld slip roll helps because it allows me to control how much roll, what angle of roll. I might only want to roll a quarter of a piece or half of a piece instead of just running the whole piece right through a power roll. And that's great for rolling things for a complete roll, but for fine tuning, the hand roll is best for that. So we're using the wireframe as a buck, basically, and we clamp to it. We can fit pieces as you see. We just put all the clamps on. We can pull pieces around and clamp everything. Once the fits are nice and tight, I can start tacking, and it's one piece at a time. Fit and clamp one piece, put the next one on, fit and clamp it, tack it so it stays there, move on to the next piece, and it's just a procedure of growing the piece from the outside in or inside out. It's just making sure all the fits are there and methodically fitting it and tacking it and fitting it and tacking it and rolling the pieces to fit. And this is where we can fine-tune the pieces to fit, or we find that a piece just isn't working, we can re-template it now. Here I'm just using a reverse clamp to put pressure on. It's like an added hand to push up on the material and get a nice tight fit. And really when you're TIG welding thin stainless, you want tight fits. Everything has to be like 1/8 of an inch or less. Preferably like a 1/16 of an inch gap is perfect. And then you get a nice weld, a nice tight fit, and the finished product looks better in the end too. I'm not working with computers. I don't have a rendering that I can just do a 3D model of and go, yeah, that works, or change it in the 3D model and then print it. It's all visual for me. So, you know, are the legs long enough? Is the body long enough? How's it going to look? And, you know, I just try to visualize it with the parts missing. And that's kind of what I do. I'm working on the eyeballs here. We waited for these spheres to come in. They're the little 3-inch spheres from Amazon, stainless steel stamped spheres that make great eyeballs. Then I make the surround out of round bar. I'm using 1/4 inch, sometimes 5/16, sometimes an 1/8 round bar, stainless round bar. And I'm shaping all the lines around the eyeball that support the eye. I'm tacking them in and then building eyelids and stuff like that off of it. And you just try to figure out the best way to 3-dimensionalize the eyes so it has kind of a realistic bird appearance to it. And then going back and figuring out a placement and an angle where they're going to sit. How high up or how low should they be? Do they face forward? Do they face backwards more? This way we can just put a tack in them. We can position them so they look like they're looking at a piece of prey or, you know, looking ahead or whatever. And once it's locked into where we want it, we'll put a tack on it, and then we can start templating around it and designing how the inner structure of the eye and the frame and the bird is fabricated around it. So, you know, each time I do these birds, they're always a little different. I tackle them in a different method. I'm really kind of a problem solver. So every day at work is a new problem, and I just focus on that individual problem or the individual step that I'm working on and work until it's solved. And then we move on to the next step. And it's kind of how it just seems to work that way, just to get a problem done, move on to the next one. The face is everything. So, you know, position of the eyes, filling it all in properly, making sure the fits are really nice, because that's the focal point when someone walks up to the bird. Oh, what's going on there? I guess that would work. So I try to think of all those little details: the skin texture, the placement of the nostrils, the placement of the eyes, the eyebrows, the frown, the look. Is he angry? Is he happy? All those are in consideration when I'm building these, and lots of times you have to go back and redo it, or you change things, or you pull something out and replace it. It just depends. Bit of an eyebrow problem.
A bit of an eyebrow problem?
I guess the worst case scenario is I cut that top one off.
That?
No, the top one.
This?
Yeah. But this one worked out pretty good for us. The top of the beak is missing there. And I already had a beak on this one, but I cut it off because I didn't like it. So the beak you see here has already been replaced, wireframed, straightened out a little bit, and I'm much happier with the look now. So there's lots of finicky little pieces, lots of finesse required around the face, and stainless doesn't like to shape. It's not very malleable. So it's just finessing the little pieces into tight fits that you can weld. It's time consuming and it's tricky, but it's worth it when you get it right. It tends to be just easier to weld, cleaner and faster to weld when you have nice fitments and everything's tacked nice and close. So when you're welding, you don't get a lot of warpage. So what some people might not realize, and you wonder why there's so many tacks, basically I try to tack every inch and sometimes every half inch. If you're tacking every 3 or 4 inches and you start to try to run a weld, the material is very heat sensitive, so it'll warp, it'll change, it'll shrink, it'll stretch as you're putting heat into it and welding. And next thing you know, the gap that you had, which was a nice tight little gap, all of a sudden it's warping and becoming a big gap. Symmetry is what it's about. So I'll take 2 pieces of the beak, the right and the left, I'll even sandwich them together, and then I'll grind all the edges so the edges are an exact mirror opposite of the piece. So they're exactly symmetrical. And then I'll start putting the shapes that I need into them. So I'll put kind of a bend in the back of the beak. It's like a natural bend. And I'm trying to bend into the center of both sides of the beak, which gives it more shape. You can see how it instantly starts to have a curve in it. And then I'm working with the roller again, just to try to put more shape in it. It's all about shaping the metal and getting the metal to come over to each other. And this has all just been done by hand, just bending it little by little. I'm wanting the beak pieces to kind of roll towards each other. And the better roll that I can get at the top of the beak without denting it, the better. And so that's the other thing I'm trying to do is, you know, stainless steel dents, and you can put creases and bends that don't belong in it. And then you weld everything together and you see those creases and bends, and it doesn't transition nice and smooth, and it doesn't, you know, it makes the finishing work impossible because it's all kind of bent and dented and it doesn't look right. So, you know, you can see in the pictures how everything is smooth, and I'm using the roll here just to bring it around even more because I want those pieces to roll together. And yeah, it just takes practice and it takes time, and that's about it. You know, once I've done all the shaping here, I'll be starting to fit the 2 big halves together. Generally, there's a little top piece because I have to roll that over so far to meet the other one that the shaping starts to get real ugly. And so this way I can shape both sides of the beak and then kind of put a cap on it and blend that cap in with welding and grinding and polishing. It gives it a nice profile for the top of the beak. I'm using round bars of backbone to tie the 2 pieces together, which allows me to have some strength. And it gives me a little curved edge in the front instead of the beak being too pointy and sharp. The round bar placed inside of there gives it a little more natural curve and natural roundness to the beak, and also gives it strength. So now I can put it on the table after it's tacked and kind of hand form and hand shape it into a better fitting piece as it goes on the bird. Once the beak is shaped, I'm squeezing it and tacking it and fitting it into the existing frame that was there, ready to receive it. It's just a round bar frame that was part of the bird that's receiving the beak. We really liked all the shaping and all the details at this point, and you know, it always transforms once you get all the welding done, and you get to grind and clean up all the welding and do all the texturing on the skin. And I'm also, if you can see that the beak has a slight curve difference on one side to the other, which I didn't notice till it was in the place there. So I ended up trimming and grinding one side of the beak and evening it out a little bit better, so it was a little more uniform. You'll see that in future episodes. So the wings are built to come off because it's too heavy to lift with the wings on, and the wings are part of the mock-up and the visual, you know, for putting the skin on and that type of thing. So they need to be in place so I can see the full scale of the piece. But now we're taking the wings off and they're a little tight, so we're using a small air ram here just to start sliding the wings separate from each other. And after they were off, we actually spent a little more time grinding and finessing the wing joints so that they were able to slip in and out a little easier. And so that's one of the things that was great about removing the wings. It's just getting to make sure that they slip in and out real easy, because that's how we install them at the client's site. So it's a super easy installation this way, and it makes them super strong designing them that way. And the feet are designed the same way to detach. So the feet slip into these round bars that you see there at the bottom of the legs. And I'm about to design the feet and mount the feet next. And so once the wings are off, I start welding them up solid. Part of the reason of bringing the body down and the wings off is so I can get things down on the ground or on a table, and it's easier to work on and weld. Just standing on the ground, on a ladder, climbing around under the bird that's already 6 feet in the air, 7 feet in the air, it's hard. So we brought it down, put it on a table, and do all the welding down here where it's easy. At this point, after the welding, I'll be starting to make the claws and starting to fabricate those, preparing to reassemble the bird with the claws. And so the next stage after welding and finishing the legs is going to be the final assembly, putting the feathers on and bringing the bird to life. Josh here is holding the lifting eye at the back here, and installing that lifting eye is a key thing that's integrated into the frame of the bird, and it's used for shipping and installation. So that eyelet can be unscrewed and removed, and we can put a little cap in the hole, and it works great for shipping and assembly purposes. This bird can actually be shipped and then installed on site in an hour. Thanks for watching, guys. Tune into new episodes coming up, and you can see this eagle come to life and other projects that we're working on, including a massive dragon sculpture. Thanks. Be sure to subscribe, like the videos. We love hearing from you in the comments too, so let me know any questions you've got. Thanks again. See you in the next video.